Jim Murray, a top whiskey critic, faces accusations of sexism. Several distillers and retailers have severed ties to the British writer after complaints surfaced about the treatment of women in his books and events. Those of you guys in the whiskey community, look up who these distillers and retailers are that severed ties with this guy because of the outrage mob, and help bankrupt them by never giving them money again. This is a fight we have to fight. If you bend the knee to the outrage mob over this, dude, you'll bend the knee to anybody. You'll just bend the knee forever. There is no other future for you. If this means sacrificing some things you used to love, so be it. Just like how Sony, despite being as shit of a company as they are, they occasionally put out things I actually like, but I never give them money anymore, or none of their subsidiaries either, on principle. I will do without something I would have otherwise liked, because fuck that company, they deserve to go bankrupt for what they've done. If you guys aren't willing to have that same level of commitment, yeah, may as well just give up and accept that everything's going to be shit from now on. It's just going to get progressively worse. For more than a decade, the British spirits writer Jim Murray has held sway as the world's most influential whiskey critic, thanks largely to his Whiskey Bible, an annual compendium of thousands of reviews, including his prestigious World Whiskey of the Year award. His words can make or break a brand, his books have sold more than 1 million copies, and his tasting events, which take him from Kentucky to India to points in between, attracts thousands of fans. Now, the one complaint I might be able to get out of this is it is kind of bullshit that a critic is given this much power. Because, again, comparing it to gaming, one of the reasons so many video games suck is because they're being made to appease the critics and not the actual customers. So definitely be wary of giving critics too much power over your industry. That is something I am definitely going to try to avoid with Sigfox Studios. So that is a legit problem, but this isn't how you break that cycle. He is sometimes compared to Robert M. Parker Jr., the prominent wine critic, but that's not quite right. The wine world is full of voices other than Mr. Parker's. With whiskey, nothing comes close to the power of a Jim Murray review. Now, how is that his fault, though? I just mentioned that the only problem I see is a critic having too much power, but this can only happen if the industry lets it happen. Among whiskey connoisseurs, though, Mr. Murray, 62, has long been a controversial figure. Some distilleries and retailers have quietly refused to carry his books or use his reviews for promotion, saying that he shows a sexist and demeaning attitude towards women in his reviews and at public events. They're not mentioning who they are. Notice they said, have quietly refused to carry his books or use his reviews for promotion. It's almost as if they know it would be a bad move to do that for this bullshit reason. So what we need to do is just track down who these retailers and distillers are, and which it should be pretty easy because they're going to be the only ones making a point of not using him. And there you go. Let nature run its course. In the current year -3 edition of Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible, for example, he likened a single malt Scotch to a 40-year-old woman who has kept her figure and looks and now only sat and stands in the way between you and so much beauty and experience. And believe me, she's spicy. So a series of books this dude has been writing for almost 20 years. Nobody cared. Nobody minded. And now in current year, some fake whiskey fans, some Karens come in and they read that and they get triggered. Now suddenly it's a problem. Okay, I'm going to give you a hot take here. He's been around for 19 years and this has never been a problem. And then as soon as the Karens show up, it's a problem? Maybe the problem is the Karens. Oh my God, mind blown. It's almost as if the toxic element just entered the community. Just like gaming. The gaming community wasn't toxic until these toxic parasites invaded it and made it toxic. maybe these are the people you should be kicking the fuck out. But no, you're just going to tell me I'm an extremist. I'm just as bad as them. Oh, we need to be moral. Oh, my principles. We need to be better than that. 5 years from now, you're going to be standing on the wreckage of your once great industry wondering what happened. Now those accusations have burst into the open. Yeah, it's not like the books haven't been published and readable by anyone for almost 20 years. On September 20th, 4 days after Mr. Murray published the current year +1 edition of the Whiskey Bible in Britain, a whiskey journalist in England named Becky Paskett, see, a whiskey journalist. It's always the journal. That's how they break in. They don't have the credentials to do anything of value, so they always come in as writers. And I ranted about this before. It's like the fishing example, right? Most of these so-called journalists, they're aiming for bigger things. Like they want to write for the New York Lies or something like that. But the only job they can land is one of these hobbyist ones. Like in this case, like say fishing. It's like, oh, you got some journalist that wants to write for the big boys, but the only place they can land a job is some fishing magazine. One problem, they don't know shit about fishing. So what do they write about? How climate change may affect fish populations, which, that's one of those articles is fine. But before you know it, people like that overrun the publication, and it's nothing but articles about like climate change and sexism in fishing, and how terms like master bait is scaring women's away from the industry, and we need more women in fishing, and the entry point is always journalism. Every single time. And these industries keep letting them have the kind of power to just lead them around by the nose. This is the real reason, by the way, that they're trying to get rid of Jim Murray so much or so hard. Because Jim Murray, right now, is the most influential critic in whiskey. These fake whiskey fans, these journalists that just came in, they want to be the gatekeepers. They want to be the ones with all the power. They want to be the most influential ones. So they have to take out the guy who's currently the most influential. And I can guarantee you, if they succeed and this industry bends over for them, it's got nowhere to go but down. So he wrote a lengthy post on Instagram and Twitter because, of course, some random lunatic on Instagram and Twitter now gets to take down the most influential voice in whiskey because it's current year. Why not? Saying that dozens of reviews in the book contain sexist language. Later that day, Felipe Soyberg, the writer at Forbes, like the article that we just covered, by the way. There's a reason I did this in order. Well, part of it was also publication order. Oh, my God. Published an article making similar allegations. And now the New York Lies is jumping on. The reaction was swift. Several major whiskey brands issued statements denouncing Mr. Murray. Yeah, this is something we just have to get used to, by the way. This is something we need to just accept that... especially if you work in one of the legacy industries, that this is going to happen. That someone's going to pound me to you, and all the soy boys are just going to turn their backs on you. When you're planning your own business, if you plan on breaking into any of these, if you plan on making replacement alternative industries for these, be prepared to fight on your own. Be prepared to have literally everybody shun you. And also be prepared to return the favor when after you succeed in supplanting them and you are the new industry and they come crawling back to you and begging for you to work with them, that's when you flip them the bird. Like, nope, you burnt that bridge years ago. You picked your side. You can fucking enjoy it, man. I want nothing to do with you. That's why you're not going to see me working with the legacy industry I'm trying to replace. Unless if they treat me well as I'm on my way up I'll be willing to work with them. But if they shun me, if they try to cancel me, then as soon as I actually end up supplanting them, I'm never working with them. Yeah, they could get fucked. If you want nothing to do with me while I'm still on the way up, I'll want nothing to do with you once I've replaced you. But all right, now maybe they'll actually start dropping names. The Whiskey Exchange, one of Britain's most prominent retailers of spirits, said it would no longer carry his book. Beam Suntory, a company that makes Alberta Premium Cask Strength and Mr. Murray's World Whiskey of the Year for current year +1, said it would no longer cite the award in its marketing. Oh my God. How hilarious would it be if they actually ended up just losing so much money over this? Yeah. See, he was willing to get them so many sales. Like, this shit would have sold out for months, if not years, because of this award. And they stabbed the guy in the back, the guy that did this for him. Now you guys know exactly who not to go support. And Miss Paskin says she has been inundated with emails from Whammons recounting their own experiences with sexism and harassment in the whiskey industry. Yeah? You guys who are in whiskey, I hope you've been paying attention to the culture war. I hope you weren't like some of those other fart sniffers, like, oh, I am above this sort of thing. Both sides are just as bad. Oh, you're both horrible. I'm not going to participate in this mudslinging. Enjoy it as it comes to you, as it comes for your stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. But this is the exact same pattern we see in every other industry that these parasites infect. And I'd be willing to bet money that all the cucks in the whiskey industry right now not going to learn a thing. I was angry that the book, so highly regarded by the industry, could be so sexist in its language, Miss Paskin said. But honestly, I wrote my post as a question, not a campaign. They always do this too. Oh yeah, I knew damn well this was going to ruin the man's life, but I just wanted to start a conversation, guys. I'm innocent. I didn't maliciously just try to cancel a man or nothing. I did not expect the reaction it has gotten. It's been surreal. In an email Wednesday, Mr. Murray denied that his books, which he self-publishes, were sexist. Rather, he said his approach was meant to evoke the tactile experiences of drinking whiskey. It is to do with sensuality, he wrote. All foods and drinks are sensual. The uproar comes as the whiskey world is undergoing rapid change for the worse. Again, same thing happened in Hollywood, same thing happened in gaming, same thing happened in comic books, same thing's happening in anime right now. When are people finally going to learn? When is enough going to be enough? Actually, that's a rhetorical question. I'm going to tell you right now when enough is going to be enough. When the people who've been burned by this shit make their own and start turning these parasites away when they notice I'm trying to get in. That's what we're going to do. If I see any of these fucking concern trolls trying to damage Blade Devil, dude, they are getting the boot instantly. I don't care who the fuck they are. All right, rapid change. Long seen as a gentleman's drink, whiskey is now going to be for basic soy boy bitches if this keeps up. It's increasingly popular amongst women. That's what I said, soy boys. Just as they have begun to climb the industry's ranks as executives and distillers. Yet it continues to be marketed primarily to men, while women's in the business, bartenders, brand ambassadors, distillers, tell of being constantly demeaned and harassed. Stories of sexist remarks, sexual comments, and instances of inappropriate behavior from customers are often spoken about among people in the industry, but always behind closed doors. Now some women are feeling empowered to talk about their experiences publicly. Rip the bar scene. Holy shit, how many more industries are these parasites gonna have to sink? Oh my God. Well, again, to all you whiskey fans out there, you've been warned. You've seen this happen in a lot of other industries and hobbies and fandoms and communities. If you haven't learned your lesson, I don't know, man. I don't know. There's nothing I can say that'll help you. Miss Paskin, 37, who helped found an organization called Our Whiskey, dedicated to making the industry more inclusive. Every single red flag, a urinalist, a Karen, creating organizations to bring more women in and make the industry more dedicated to women. Once again, the idiots just never learn. I'd be willing to bet money that 99% of the whiskey industry is gonna turn out in defense of this parasite. They're gonna defend their own murderers to the bitter end. I am legit starting to believe that no industry that's been infected with this shit is salvageable in the first place, nor is it worth saving. Just let them die and be like the phoenix that rises from the ashes of the dumpster fire. Let the legacy industry burn and create something new as an alternative. And make sure you take note of who these bad actors are so they can never get a foothold in your new industry. You need to be explicitly hostile to them from the very beginning and never let up on it. There's going to be cucks that are going to call you extremist and say you should give them a second chance. You know what you should do? Kick those cucks out too. They will do way more harm than good if you let them stay. They're the ones that are going to open the gates to the enemies. Like, you could have an impenetrable fortress, and these fucking idiots will be the ones opening the gates to every Trojan horse that rolls by. You need to get rid of them too. You know, so she said she wasn't planning to go after Mr. Murray when she got the call from Mr. Soyberg, on September 17th. He had seen one of the reviews from the latest edition of the Whiskey Bible in which Murray used overtly sexual language to describe an Indian whiskey. The end of the experience is like after you have just made love and you are unable to speak, which struck him as odd. And this is a guy who was apparently like a whiskey writer, and this is his first time seeing something like this, really? Yeah, he got an electronic copy of the book and began to search through it. Translation: snowflakes who were looking for something to be triggered by. They had to hunt for something to be triggered by. I hit Control F for woman, and all of a sudden I could see he does this a lot, Mr. Soyberg said. Together with Miss Paskin, he documented scores of similar references, many comparing whiskey to women, often in sexual terms. Yeah, together with Miss Paskin, you launched this hit piece on this man's career. Now, from both of them come from jealousy, I bet. They are both jealous that he has more power and influence than they do. That's all this is. It's fucking jealousy. And this dickless industry is going to bend over for it. Just watch. Describing a bottle of the famous Gross, a blended scotch, and also in the current year +1 edition, he wrote, "The texture is silk, normally found on the most expensive lingerie, and as sexy as who you might find inside of it." Did these bigots assume he was talking about a woman? Cancel them. In addition to Beam Suntory, 3 other global spirits companies, Bacardi, Pernod Ricard, and Diageo, I don't even know how to pronounce that, quickly released statements distancing themselves from Mr. Murray's book. The Scotch Whisky Association, the trade body that oversees the Scottish whiskey industry, released a statement calling Mr. Murray's language offensive. Drop them all. If these cucks refuse to stand up to the parasites invading their industry, the best you can do is completely cut them off. Because if you keep hanging out with them, they will drag you down. These are the people I'm talking about that keep holding the gates open for all the Trojan horses. Let them get overrun. Let them get destroyed. Laugh as they cry about it. Laugh as they're like, oh, I didn't know this was going to happen, and move on making your own. Ditch them. Let this industry burn. In perhaps the most forceful expression of concern, Sukhinder Singh, owner of the Whiskey Exchange, explained why he had decided not to carry Mr. Murray's book, saying in a statement, "We've thought a lot about this topic and do not feel the comments made in this book fit well with our vision of the whiskey community." Translation: we determine what the whiskey community will be. Fuck all of you actual whiskey connoisseurs out there. Your opinions don't matter. We will dictate how this community is run. And these same people are going to wonder where all their customers went. Adding, "We feel passionately about making whiskey a spirit that can be enjoyed by everyone." Once again, every single red flag. They want this to be enjoyed by everyone except for us. I mean, fuck everyone who was here from the start. Fuck everyone who was perfectly fine with the way things were for 20 years. We have to completely upend everything because a few Karens came in yesterday and they have some complaints. And the language used in the Whiskey Bible runs counter to this business ethos. Well, we'll see if you're going to be saying the same thing when you're out of a job. Mr. Murray defended the passages from his books that have come under fire, saying that they occur only rarely and they are even more rarely gendered, and when they are usually drawn from his own experiences. The reference is likely to be either a coded message to a girlfriend or even ex-girlfriend whom I know will be reading the Bible and whom I'm still on close terms with. But Mr. Murray's choice of words is only part of his problem. Several people in the industry also cite his behavior. Andrew Ferguson, the owner of Kensington Wine Market in Calgary, Alberta, said he stopped carrying the Whiskey Bible after an event he attended where Mr. Murray singled out a woman in the audience and asked the crowd to imagine her naked as a way of making a point about a whiskey. Now, how did the woman respond? If she was made uncomfortable by this and he stopped, I'm just going to tell you now, every woman I've ever met who's actually been attractive, she knows the kind of power she has over men with her body and is not ashamed of it. And clearly that shows how much experience this guy has with women. David Vitale, owner of Starward, an Australian distillery, said that a similar event persuaded him not to send Mr. Murray samples of his whiskey or to carry his book at his distillery. In my mind, Jim Murray doesn't exist, Mr. Vitale said. Hey, maybe soon his distillery won't exist. Wouldn't that be ironic? At an event in current year -6 at the Manhattan headquarters of Caskers, an online spirits retailer, Mr. Murray discussed his tasting method at length, including his decision whether to spit or swallow the whiskey. He then pointed to a woman in the crowd and asked which she preferred to spit or to swallow, in a tone according to 4 witnesses that made the sexual double entendre clear. Now that just, dude, if he pointed at a guy, that would have just been funny. I mean, shit, if I was in the audience and he pointed to me, I would have probably replied with, I prefer if she swallows. but whatever. If you guys can't even take a fucking joke, please get the fuck out of everything I'm into. I cannot stand humorless people. Like, people with no sense of humor are one of the biggest blights on society, and I wish they'd fucking go away. They infest everything and ruin it. While Mr. Murray said he did not recall these specific events, I mean, he literally has a life and he does this all the time. He conceded that he singles out both female and male attendees for such treatment. Yeah, notice they never point out when he does this to men, obviously. Like, he could have done this 100 times and twice was to women, and those are the only 2 stories you're going to hear. Usually with their prearranged consent. Nope, that's the important one, usually with their prearranged consent. Oh, but consent doesn't matter when they consent to something you disapprove of, right? He said he has never received complaints. Once again, there was nothing wrong with this industry until these toxic parasites moved in. Instead of getting rid of the people who made you as great as you are now, get rid of the toxic parasites. Get rid of the fake geek girls. Memorably, once a lady actually started taking her cardigan off, and I had to stop her from taking the display further, he wrote. If I had offended anybody at Caskers or anyone else, then I apologize with heartfelt sincerity. Okay. He was such a Chad until that point. Never apologize for offending someone. If someone gets offended, you laugh at them for being a fucking bitch. The only apology you give to someone who's offended is, well, I'm sorry you're such a thin-skinned little bitch. Go cry to someone who cares. That's the only apology offended people deserve. He added that he no longer includes overtly sexual language at his tastings. Everything evolves, he said. Today, my tastings are still fun and unique, but models of restraint. Oh, for all the good that's doing you, you're still getting canceled. For many whammons in the industry, Mr. Murray's behavior is merely an indicator of a more pervasive problem. The long-standing gendered assumptions about who drinks whiskey, who counts as an expert, and whether men's dominance gives them the license to engage in sexist and abusive behavior. That's right. Run all the men out of whiskey and see what happens. See what that does to it. I'm sure it's going to be great. been a long time coming, said Heather Green, owner of Milam and Green, a distillery in Texas. It was only a matter of time before people started saying, this doesn't work for me. I don't see myself in this, and that makes me uncomfortable. All right. So you'll understand when we reciprocate, right? When the rest of us see what you're doing and go, this doesn't work for me. I don't see myself in this, and it makes me uncomfortable. And we kick you the fuck out. These guys have been making clear from the very beginning that it's either us or them. You realize this, right? There's no middle ground with these terrorists. If you let them in, they will take over and kick you out. Your only option is to exclude them. But no, I'm just being an extremist. I'm just as bad as them. We're better than that. Okay. I'll remember that when you're out on your ass and crying that you got kicked out of your own community. I'll remember that. I will. Whether or not the corporations that dominate the industry will follow their denunciations of Mr. Murray with meaningful change remains to be seen. Now, I hope he actually responds by completely cutting them out in the future. And there is some concern that he will be made a scapegoat, diverting attention from a deeper, more uncomfortable engagement with sexism in whiskey. So not only, it's not enough that they canceled the guy. Now they're complaining that his cancellation may distract from their efforts to cancel everyone else in the industry. And the industry is still going to bend over. They're still going to refuse to kick these fuckers out. What we need is some of these industry veterans with balls to actually stand by this guy. We need some of these distillers and retailers to come out and say, fuck all of you guys trying to ruin our industry. We're going to stand by our boy. I doubt any of them have the balls, though. I've seen this play out multiple times. A few of them may refuse to denounce him, but eventually they'll get bullied into submission. That's why I've given up on every existing industry right now. We have to make our own from scratch and specifically exclude all the bad actors from the previous ones. I've seen a lot of suppliers jump on the bandwagon, but there's no one to hold them accountable, said Amanda Victoria, the founder of the drinks company Sipone, and the former communications director of the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. Yeah, of course it's a communications director. Yeah, basically a social media manager in current year. I've seen them do this same song and dance, and nothing gets done. Yeah, I think it's about time we force them to stop doing it, force them to actually grow some balls and say, we're not playing this game anymore. We're not dancing for you anymore. But Ms. Paskin and Ms. Green said they are optimistic about the industry's ability to adapt, if only because demographic changes will force it to become more inclusive. Just like with Hollywood, huh? Oh yeah, demographic changes lead us to make a female-centric Terminator that completely shits on the existing canon. Yeah, I mean, it has to change. All the men are gone because you drove them away, you fucking idiots. These people are actively driving away their most loyal customers and then complaining that they're going to be complaining soon that they're going to go broke. Like this would be like a mobile live service gotcha game company shitting on its whales and then wondering why they're going bankrupt. All the people, their most loyal fans who've been with them for ages, who spend the most money on them, these are the people that they're stabbing in the back. I cannot wait to see them reap what they've sown for this. I really can't. I hope that in the future, it's just as normal for a woman to walk into a bar and ask for a whiskey as often as they do a beer and not have anyone ask, is that too strong for you? I've seen women order whiskey all the goddamn time and no one said anything. Jeez, man. Maybe just all the women that hang out with these losers are pansy. Well, they're not real whiskey fans. These are infiltrators. Like we've just established. Journalists, social media managers, the exact people who you should not be listening to. And that's what the industry bends over for. Hopefully there are a few people with brains in whiskey. If not, maybe I'll have to buy a few fucking barrels and start learning how to make my own whiskey here. Maybe I'll have to do that. That may be the only option. I mean, I'm not really that big of a whiskey connoisseur, so I'll leave that up to the experts. I mean, just add that to the list of shit we're going to have to make our own.
Oh man, I am so excited to tell you guys right now that finally, after about a year of build-up and shilling, we have launched Blade Devil on Indiegogo, and so far it is doing so well thanks to awesome people like you. If you haven't backed it yet, then please check the links in the description and check out Blade Devil on Indiegogo. You will not be disappointed. Looking forward to seeing you there.